Because stepping outside of the herd means that you have to be strong, which means you better prepare yourself, which means you're going to have to willingly submit yourself to struggles and challenges, because that's how you get stronger. You don't get stronger by thinking about it. You don't get stronger by having the courage to lift the weights. You get stronger by doing it. And it's that resistance that makes you stronger. It's the tearing of the muscles. It's the soreness. It's the pain. That's that struggle that makes you stronger. Nietzsche, he said, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. He doesn't say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because it's not true that what doesn't kill most people makes most people stronger. What doesn't kill most people makes us fragile. It makes us behave differently. It makes us conform. It makes us resentful, contemptuous. It makes us jaded. There are people who will say, who get their hearts broken, and then you'll see them completely change their behavior. Why? Because I've been hurt before. And so we put up walls that stop us from being able to connect with other people. That's not brave. That's not courageous. It sure as hell isn't strong. What it is it's allowing other people, it's allowing the herd to change you, to conform you, and to be more like the herd. To get what you could possibly become, you have to sacrifice what you presently are. And what you presently are, like, really think about it. What are you sacrificing? What are most of us walking around? Most people walk around, they're like anxious and self-doubting, and they not believing in themselves because of past failures, and they're jaded and they're resentful and they're content. That's what you're giving up to become what you possibly could become. If you let these judgments of society interfere with what you could possibly be, you'll never be anything more than what you see around you. And what you see around you is most people just living absolute lives of quiet desperation. Wake up, go to work, go home, watch television. Wake up, go to work, go home, watch television. Once in a while there's a birthday. And then we go home. We wake up, we go to work, come home and watch television. First thing, man, you have to imagine what you could possibly be, which is almost impossible. So figure out what you value. When you figure out what you value, you pursue that relentlessly. And you will be absolutely amazed where it can take you. So where does this idea, well, first off, in a real basic sense, what is morality? Some kind of a working definition for us.
Knowing what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, knowing what's right and what's wrong. And particularly having an idea of what's right and wrong in a behavioral sense. So like 2 + 2 = 4. That's not a moral question. And like, you know what's right in that case, but we're not talking about that kind of a right. We're talking specifically about proper types of behavior, and especially behavior between people, but also behavior within ourselves. So in other words, you can, if we might say that it's wrong to lie. Okay, well, it's not, if it's true that it's wrong to lie, it's not wrong to lie just to another person. For the same reasons it's wrong to lie to another person, it can be very wrong to lie to yourself as well, intentionally. So we're just talking about proper behavior. Okay, so now this idea of a herd instinct, why do you suppose he might refer to it as a herd? Because it doesn't sound like a really positive impression that he's giving of it. Yeah.
Just because it's what everybody else does.
Yeah, because that's what everybody else does. So therefore, whenever we're looking at I guess, systems or even ideas, it's always a really good question to ask, why? Why do they do this? Oh, we were just talking about this something back there. What the heck was it? Or no, maybe it was during nutrition. I was talking to some people, and I asked this question. Oh, that's right. I got a message, and I was just like, oh my God, why would you do that? And then somebody asked me, what's the message, Jan? And so I described it, and then I go, what are you doing? I go, trying to figure out, why would you do that? In other words, there's a reason that people do the things that they do. If someone does something that you think is really stupid, try not to think of it as being really stupid. It might be, but first things first, figure out why. People do things for reasons. even if they're bad reasons, people do things for reasons. So figuring out what the reason for it is, what's the purpose of an action? And that's really important for us to figure out about just about everything, because if you don't have a purpose for something, you're not going to take it very seriously. So, for example, what's the purpose in coming to school? What's your purpose in coming to school? And when I ask that, oftentimes we give those bullshit answers: to have a better future, to get an education. Why are most of us here? What's the real purpose? I want to see my friends, or I want to not get yelled at by my parents, or I want to, not fill in the blank. Now, if you're here because you want to not get yelled at by your parents, then what will you do? You'll do the kind of what you need to do in order to not get yelled at. If you're here because you want to see your friends, what will you do? Well, you'll be here as much as you want to see your friends, and you'll put yourself in those capacities. If you're here because you want to get an education, then you'll approach it very differently than you otherwise would. And if you're here for a combination and a mixture of those things, then you're dividing yourself and your intentions among all of those things. And it's fine. But the point is just that if you're consciously aware of why you're doing what you're doing, now you can become really good at it. In other words, if you sit here and say, well, I'm here to get an education, then you're going to be really good at getting that education thing. If you're here because you want to see your friends, you'll be really good at that seeing your friends thing. Like anything else in life, whatever you really pour yourself into, you're going to be really good at. So it's a good idea to ask ourselves, what's the purpose of morality? Why do we do it? And there can be a couple of possibilities. One of the purposes of morality might be going back to kind of like what Alicia was getting at, that it kind of helps with a well-ordered society. Why do we not steal? Because everybody says we shouldn't do it. And why does everybody say we shouldn't do it? I don't know. Maybe because it would help if we lived in a society where everybody stole, the society could never operate. You could never function. Would you go to work? If theft was legal, would you go to work? Maybe not. What's the point in going to work if the reason that you go to work is to get money? And there are lots of reasons to go to work, but let's say your primary motivation, your purpose for going to work is to get money. Why would you go to work to get money? If you buy a car, someone's just going to steal it. If you buy a house, someone's just going to move into it. There's no reason to. And so maybe for a well-ordered society, we should get rid of theft. But that's kind of like, in that sense, it's because the purpose of morality, in that case, is a well-ordered society. If instead the purpose of your morality is to live a good life, and of course, now you have to figure out what it means to have a good life, and then you have to structure a moral system around attaining that good life. First things first, got to figure out what those things are. It's a lot of work, and so most of us just don't even know why we do the things that we do. Why does the herd go left? I don't know. You ever see a pack of fish swimming, and like all of a sudden they all just get cut together? They don't necessarily cut all together at the same time. There's someone near the front who cuts left, and it's almost instantaneous. They recognize a change in pattern, so they all cut left, and they all cut right. No one really knows why they do it. In fact, the fish doing it at the front might not even know why he's doing it. He's just doing it. And then we all kind of go along with it. And maybe that's what morality is. Maybe it's just we function by certain systems, and they seem to work out pretty well. And if they didn't work out, we'd all be dead, so we wouldn't know otherwise. So because it works out and we do it, it just becomes part of like this instinctual thing in us. But now going back to what he's talking about here, understand then that a lot of our morality is not our own morality. Like if I were to ask you, is it okay to steal? We'll oftentimes say no, and they'll ask you why not, and then we'll start to like reason about it. If it was your morality, you'd have a reason for it right off the bat. You wouldn't have to think back to try to figure it out. In other words, we're trying to reason backwards. We're reasoning from the conclusion rather than arriving at a conclusion from our reasoning. It's wrong to steal. Why? Well, because... And you have to fill in those gaps. If I were to ask you, is it okay to steal, to murder somebody? A lot of times we'll say, no. Why not? Well, because you're killing somebody. It's like, right, that's what murder is. Why is that wrong? Well, because, and these are the most obvious cases. If we have answers for anything, we should have answers for those cases. But what you're going to find is that oftentimes we don't have reasons for those cases because we're indoctrinated just by virtue of the fact that, like the fish, don't realize that they're swimming in water. When it cuts left, it doesn't know why it's cutting left. It just does. If you were to ask the fish about water currents and the temperature of the water, it would have no idea what you're talking about because it lives in water. It's never known anything else. If I were to ask you why it is that the moral standards we live by are what they are, We have no idea how to answer that because it's the water that we've been swimming in our whole lives. And so what that tells us is that it's not our water, and the moral systems largely are not our moral systems. They work, but they work for the society that we presently live in. But do they work for the life that you presently inhabit? Now, what's going to happen if you start living by a different morality? Well, you're going to be living by a morality that's different from the society in which you live. And how is your society going to feel about that? They're not going to like it. And so what's going to happen? Well, they're going to first off, what you're going to get is a lot of social condemnation. So think about it if you just decide, whatever it is, there's something in your mind or something in your life that you would do maybe if you thought that you could do it without consequence. And that doesn't just mean like kill somebody. It doesn't just mean like to steal something. Think about some kind of behavior that you don't do because there's some kind of a social taboo about it, we might say. So for example, I have a friend, call her Bubbles, because she has a bubbly personality. And she lives in Las Vegas. And we started talking a little bit, just messing it here and there, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Someone I've known for a long time, but something happened, so we're kind of, talked a little bit. This is a person who, she describes herself as being very sheltered, very, very close with her parents, which is really cool. But there's this tension that that you can kind of feel where there's this desire to be like the parents and to follow those guidelines, which is a good thing. But there's also this desire to like break apart from all of that. And so, you ever notice like if you I don't know how you say it, like if you give a playlist to somebody, do you realize what you're giving that person? It's not just music. You're giving them some insight into you as a person. If you give me a Spotify playlist and I listen to it, I'm going to go, I know some things about you. I can discover some things about you. You give somebody a movie list, tell people what movies you like. You know a lot about a person based off of the movies that they like. So anyway, she gave me a movie list, and I watched some of them. And watching it, I go, I see something very particular about this person based off of that movie list. And one of them was one of the themes I've noticed in the movies is that it's typically a person who has like a personality and they're trying to break free from the mold that they presently live in. And it's always in like some way that like they step outside of boundaries and they basically give the middle finger to all the social expectations around them. You follow the pattern with this person? Yeah. And of course she's wise enough, she's smart enough to see it. And so I thought to ask like, how would you live? What would you do differently if there was no social pressure, if there was no social ostracization, if no one were to counsel you or to call you out? How would you behave differently? Because that's one of the ways that we keep people in line. We make people afraid of saying things. We make people afraid of doing things that they otherwise would do. Why? Because if you step outside of that, you're no longer useful to society. Now, the nefarious part of it is that you don't have like a bunch of people sitting around in a room like twirling their mustaches and tapping their fingers. How can we keep people in line? No, it just so happens that the things we adopt are effective for keeping people in line, which perpetuates a society. But again, what perpetuates a society may or may not be good for you. So now you can ask yourself, how would you behave differently if you're able to live beyond these judgments of good and evil? If you weren't afraid of people calling you out for these things. In fact, better yet, if you had the courage to step outside of that and to risk having to do it on your own and having to risk doing it while being called out and ostracized, made fun of. Because making fun of is another it's the weak person's tool. It's like sarcasm. It's the weak person's version of courage. They pretend to be courageous by being sarcastic, but it really isn't courageous. It's really not strong. And so think about the type of an individual it would take to be able to say, you know what? I'm not going to stand with the herd. I'm going to separate myself from it. Well, you have to have the courage to do that. It's hard to do. And then not only do you have to have the courage to do it, but you have to have the strength to be capable of doing it, to stand on your own. It's one thing to have the courage to do it. I see all kinds of people online, especially putting the chin out there and getting in people's faces and yelling at people. Oh, and say, oh wow, they're so courageous. No, they just haven't been punched yet. And then sometimes you can count it down and you can see how long it takes reality to catch up with this person. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then someone punches them. And then when they punch him, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe they hit him. Why not? That's right, because the person was living within a social constraint that says you can't punch a person in the face no matter how obnoxious they are, no matter how courageous and brave they pretend to be. Now, next time, that person won't be nearly as courageous. When they come out of their coma, when they wake up, they won't be nearly as courageous because reality hit them. So now you realize maybe they had the courage to pretend to step outside, but they don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the capacity to do it. So in order to step outside of that, you have to have the courage and the capacity. To put it in a natural sense, the gazelles all run together because there's safety in numbers. Why doesn't one gazelle step outside of the rest of the gazelles?
Jumped.
What's that?
They're gonna get jumped.
They're gonna get jumped. They're gonna get eaten by the lion. Yeah, they're gonna get jumped and eaten by the lion. Now, if that gazelle's been at the gym, the gazelle's been learning. The gazelle's been sharpening his. I think gazelles have horns, right? They've been sharpening their horns, and they're pacing like, oh, I'm getting ready for that lion. Maybe that gazelle might have the strength to stand up to a lion. Maybe, but probably not. So if it does say, you know what, I'm stepping outside because I'm a good gazelle. I'm a good person, and then they're gonna get eaten. No, they have to stay with the herd. And that means they have to give up part of who they are. In fact, better yet, they have to give up part of who they could become. Because stepping outside of the herd means that you have to be strong, which means you better prepare yourself, which means you're going to have to willingly submit yourself to struggles and challenges, because that's how you get stronger. You go to the gym and you lift weights and you get stronger. You don't get stronger by thinking about it. You don't get stronger by having the courage to lift the weights. You get stronger by doing it. And it's that resistance that makes you stronger. It's the tearing of the muscles. It's the soreness. It's the pain. That's that struggle that makes you stronger. Tell me if you've heard this before. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Anybody know where that comes from? Somebody once told me it comes from Taylor Swift.
No, Kelly Clarkson.
What's that?
Kelly Clarkson.
Exactly. I got corrected on that. It's not Taylor Swift. By the way, it's not Kelly Clarkson either. Kelly Clarkson heard it from somebody. That's the guy who originally said it. Nietzsche. He said, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. He doesn't say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because it's not true that what doesn't kill most people makes most people stronger. What doesn't kill most people makes us fragile. It makes us behave differently. It makes us conform. It makes us resentful, contemptuous. It makes us jaded. There are people who will say, who get their hearts broken, and then you'll see them completely change their behavior. Why? Because I've been hurt before. And so we put up walls that stop us from being able to connect with other people. That's not brave. That's not courageous. It sure as hell isn't strong. What it is it's allowing other people, it's allowing the herd to change you, to conform you into being more like the herd. Because what is the herd that runs around in society? Do you see people excited to go to their jobs? You see people excited to go to their works? And how many people do you know who are really love their jobs, really love their work? It's pretty rare. And yet those are people who are going to come along and tell you how you should live. You should be more like me and go and do what I did. Dude, your eyes are dead. You look like you're walking around just envying the dead. Yeah, but that's what you're supposed to do. No, it's not what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do if you want to be like the herd. And there is safety in it, absolutely, 100%. You'll have a life, I suppose. You'll pursue some interests here and there, I suppose. You'll have some things, I suppose. But you're not going to have what you possibly could have. The problem is you're not guaranteed the things that you could possibly have, because it takes a lot to get those things. To get what you could possibly become, you have to sacrifice what you presently are. And what you presently are, really think about it. What are you sacrificing? What are most of us walking around? Most people walk around and they're anxious and self-doubting and they not believing in themselves because of past failures, and they're jaded and they're resentful and they're content. That's what you're giving up to become what you possibly could become. But what are you risking, of course, in the process, which is to be less than mediocre? That's the gamble, I suppose. At least that's what we're conditioned to think. And again, it's not like we typically think of like, man, it's society that does this to us. Get over that idea of hating society. There aren't people, again, twirling their mustaches, tapping their fingers, trying to get you to become something else. It doesn't work like that. It just happens out to be that way. So what you do is you figure out what's important to you. You figure out your values. Because you can't live a valuable life unless you know what you're pursuing in the first place. You can't get a deep education unless what you're coming for is that. You can't make lots of friends unless you come here specifically for that. Be clear about what it is that you're pursuing. And then you just fucking pursue that thing relentlessly. And this is why most people don't get things that are that deep, because they don't pursue anything relentlessly. We just stumble through life and mumble through it all. And then we say things like, that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, if you want to be like everybody else, that's what you're supposed to do. But here's the thing, what are you supposed to be? If you let these judgments of society interfere with what you could possibly be, you'll never be anything more than what you see around you. And what you see around you is most people just living absolute lives of quiet desperation. Wake up, go to work, go home, watch television. Wake up, go to work, go home, watch television. Once in a while there's a birthday party. And then we go home. We wake up, we go to work, come home and watch television. So, first thing, man, you have to imagine what you could possibly be, which is almost impossible. So figure out what you value. And when you figure out what you value, you pursue that relentlessly. And you will be absolutely amazed where it can take you. But you have to give up what you presently are. And that's the fear. Because what you are conditioned to be is guaranteed, 100%. But what you could be is the risk. Step outside of the herd. But that means preparing yourself. Get ready for the lions. They're going to come. The good news is the most annoying things in your life are going to be the rest of the herd, who are going to look at you and be like, oh my God, they stepped outside the herd. What's wrong with them? They're doing their own thing. Yeah, of course they would say that, because you're reminding them of how weak they are. And they'll come after you in numbers. Don't worry about it. They're weak. That's why they have to group together in numbers. But that means you have to prepare yourself. Or don't. Wake up, go to work, come home, watch television. Do it for 70 years. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday.